Post-training anabolic window. Now, you've all heard of it, but is there truth to it, or is it just complete nonsense? So we're going to cover that in today's video. Now, firstly, what are we referring to, or what is the myth, so to speak, when we hear of that post-training anabolic window? So it's very often broadcasted that post-training we have this very short time period where we need to maximize the physiological state we're in from training to therefore uptake protein, glycogen more efficiently in terms of then, repairing broken muscle tissue, muscle protein synthesis, etc. So what is often believed is that we have this very short window of time. I've heard 15, 20, 30 minutes thrown around before, whereby if we don't consume those nutrients, we're actually not going to be getting the most efficient uptake of those nutrients from our training. So firstly, this is completely wrong. Now, the reasoning for this actually not being true is how counterproductive it can be to actually consume foods immediately post-training. So what do we know about resistance training? Obviously, with contracted skeletal muscle, there's going to be a requirement for blood flow for that skeletal muscle. There's going to be an increase in overall heart rate. Now, because of the increase in heart rate, because of the potential increase in blood pressure and the increase in contracted skeletal muscle, the body is not in the best position to actually absorb nutrients. And the reason for that is because training is a stress. More than anything, above everything, resistance training is a stress on the body. Okay, now with stress, what do we know about stress? We're going to have the secretion of the hormone cortisol, amongst other hormones, adrenaline, etc. And because of the release in cortisol, which is therefore released into the gut and the gastrointestinal system, we're actually going to get a down-regulation, or not so much a down-regulation, but it's actually going to stunt the production of the enzymes in the gut, which are responsible for breaking down food. Now, if we've got a less enzymatic rich environment to break down the food, it's not so much going to be the process of absorption. So we're not actually, really affecting the mechanism of the small and large intestine absorbing those nutrients into the bloodstream. But what we're affecting is the ability for the gut to actually break that food down. So have you ever noticed after not just training, but being in a high period of stress, whether that's work-related stress or anything else, have you ever noticed that you get bloated? You most probably have. Everyone's experienced having a high amount of stress and struggling to actually break their food down and feeling that bloated feeling. So this is just because of the stress and the release of cortisol and the effect that this is going to have on that gut, on the gut biome and the gut enzyme production. So training is a stress, and people forget that. And it's not a negative stress, it's a stress that we want. We want to create stress on the body because we want the body to therefore notice that stress, recover and come back stronger, and offset of muscle protein synthesis, which is a separate topic. But it's a stress that we want to induce. However, post-training, we actually want to wait a time period for that stress to start to dissipate. And essentially, we want to allow a time period for the resting heart rate to come down and return at least to just above baseline, if not baseline. We're going to allow a period of time for the cardiovascular system to catch up, for you to catch your breath, so to speak, which is very heavily linked with resting heart rate, and just a time period for you to actually reduce the stress on the body. So what I say to clients and individuals is if you're traveling to the gym, it takes you 15, 20 minutes, finish your session, get home, get a shower, do what you need to do, 45 minutes to 60 minutes post-training, you're going to notice within that time period, the stress is reduced, okay, heart rate has come down, and the body essentially is in a much more relaxed position to actually uptake nutrients. Okay, now within this time phase, because of all those things that have occurred, the body now is in a position where enzyme production is rich. The body is in a position where it can start to break the food down more efficiently, and that overall stress on the body has started to reduce. And the key word we're looking for here is going into what we call a parasympathetic nervous state. Okay, so the nervous system has two states: sympathetic dominance, which is also known as fight or flight, which is a nervous system state that we need. Okay, it was, if you think back way to our ancestors, sympathetic nervous system state was needed if there was an attack from, a lion or something on your camp, and that sympathetic drive would essentially rush blood to the extremities. That's why it's sometimes associated with feeling of sort of butterflies in the stomach if you hit that anxious, that nervous state. It's a state that the body needs. Okay, but in terms of digesting food, we need what's called rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic nervous state. And in order to encourage the body to switch into that state, we need to allow the heart rate to come down. We need to allow the stress to be removed. So if we can do that, our ability to uptake nutrients is going to be much better because the food's going to be absorbed broken down from the gut, and then it's going to be much easier for it to be absorbed by the intestines into the bloodstream. Win-win. We're going to have a more productive post-training meal. In terms of that post-training nutrition, a good bolus of carbohydrate intake, because we know there's a little bit of data to suggest we're going to be a little bit more sensitive to insulin within that time frame due to the depletion of glycogen stores in the muscle, and obviously protein being the hardest macronutrient to digest, we need to be creating the best environment possible in the gut in order to break that food down. Okay, so post-training anabolic window is a complete myth. It's actually counterproductive. You don't need to be hammering a load of sugar and protein immediately after training. Wait a good period of time, allow heart rate to come down, allow stress to be reduced, and then enjoy your post-training meal. Okay guys, that was a post-training anabolic window. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll speak soon.